Do you remember that quiet, dust-covered journey across a broken land, where revenge spoke softly and survival meant everything? The Outlaw Josey Wales gave us faces we never forgot, but time has rewritten their stories in ways few expected. Then they were legends in the making. Now their lives tell something deeper. Which character stayed with you all these years? Clint Eastwood as Josey Wales was around 46 years old when he stepped into one of the most defining roles of his career. By then, audiences already knew him as the man with no name. But Josey was different. He wasn't just a gunslinger, he was grief held in silence, a man shaped by loss who spoke less and felt more. That quiet intensity became the soul of the film, and Eastwood carried it with a kind of control that few actors ever master. What makes his story even more compelling is what came after. While many stars of the Western era faded with time, Eastwood did the opposite. He evolved. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped behind the camera and began building a second legacy. Not just as an actor, but as a director who understood human complexity. Films like Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby didn't just earn awards. They redefined how aging, regret, and redemption could be portrayed on screen. By 2026, Clint Eastwood is 95 years old, a rare figure in Hollywood whose career has spanned generations. His personal life, often discussed publicly over the years, includes multiple relationships and a large family, reflecting a life lived fully, if sometimes quietly complicated. Yet through it all, what stands out is consistency, discipline, control. Josey Wales was a man trying to outrun his past. Eastwood, in many ways, did the opposite. He embraced time, adapted to it, and kept creating long after others stopped. His story isn't just about survival in Hollywood. It's about reinvention and the rare ability to grow older without losing relevance. And yet, if Eastwood represented control and endurance, the next story carries a very different kind of power. One rooted not in silence, but in wisdom earned over a lifetime. Chief Dan George, who played Lone Waddy, was already around 78 years old when he appeared in the Outlaw Josey Wales. At an age when most actors had long stepped away, he brought something extraordinary to the screen. Gentle humor, quiet dignity, and a presence that felt deeply lived in. Lone Waddy wasn't just a companion to Josey, he was a counterbalance. Where Josey carried pain, Waddy carried perspective. Before this role, Chief Dan George had already made a profound impact with his Academy Award-nominated performance in Little Big Man. But what makes his journey so remarkable is how late it all came. Acting was not his first life. He had been a chief of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, a poet, a speaker, someone deeply rooted in culture and identity. Hollywood didn't define him. If anything, he brought something far richer into it. In Josey Wales, every line he delivered felt unforced, almost like wisdom shared rather than performed. Audiences connected with him not through spectacle, but through sincerity. He reminded viewers that strength doesn't always come from force. It can come from understanding, from patience, from knowing when to laugh even in difficult times. Chief Dan George passed away at the age of 84, leaving behind more than just film roles. He left a legacy of representation, of dignity, and of showing that recognition can come at any stage of life. His story stands in quiet contrast to Eastwood's. Where one built a decades-long empire, the other arrived later, but with a voice that carried just as far. And as we continue, one of the most emotionally complex stories in this cast is still ahead. Sondra Locke, who portrayed Laura Lee, was around 33 years old when she appeared in the Outlaw Josey Wales. In a story filled with violence and survival, her presence brought something softer, something human. Laura Lee wasn't just a companion. She represented the possibility of healing. Through her, we saw a different side of Josey, one that hinted at trust, vulnerability, and the fragile hope of starting again. Locke's performance carried a quiet strength. She didn't need grand gestures to be remembered. It was in the stillness, in the way she listened, in the emotional space she created. Audiences felt that. And in many ways, it mirrored her own path in Hollywood. Her career extended beyond acting. Over time, she moved into directing, determined to shape her own creative voice in an industry that often limited it. That transition wasn't easy, but it spoke to something deeper, an insistence on independence, on being more than just a presence beside someone else's story. Her personal life, particularly her long and widely known relationship with Clint Eastwood, remained part of public conversation for years. It was a partnership that intersected both professionally and personally, and like many relationships lived in the spotlight, it drew attention beyond the work itself. Still, Locke's identity as an artist stood on its own, especially in her later years as she focused more on directing and writing. She passed away at the age of 74, leaving behind a career that may not have followed a conventional path, but one that reflected persistence and self-definition. Sondra Locke's story is not just about who she worked with, but about who she chose to become. And just as her story reveals emotional depth behind the screen, the next face reminds us of something very different, that sometimes the people we fear most on screen are far removed from who they truly were. Bill McKinney, who played Captain Terrell, was around 35 years old during the filming of the Outlaw Josey Wales. His role was not meant to comfort, it was meant to unsettle. Terrell was ruthless, cold, and driven by a kind of authority that left no room for mercy. He wasn't just an antagonist. He was the force that shaped Josey's path, the shadow that lingered over the entire story. McKinney had a unique ability to embody characters that audiences instinctively distrusted. His presence alone could create tension, and in this film, he used that to full effect. Yet off-screen, his life told a very different story. Over the years, he built a solid career as a character actor, appearing in dozens of films and television roles. He wasn't always in the spotlight, but he was always recognizable. The kind of actor whose face stayed with you, even if you couldn't immediately place the name. That quiet consistency became his signature. He continued working steadily for decades, proving that longevity in Hollywood doesn't always come from leading roles, but from reliability, from craft, from showing up and delivering something real every time. Bill McKinney passed away at the age of 80. And while audiences may remember him as the man they loved to hate, his career reflects something more grounded. A professional who understood his place in storytelling and embraced it fully. Because sometimes, the most unforgettable villains are not defined by darkness, but by how convincingly they bring a story to life. But among all these powerful performances, one story remains quietly unforgettable. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it stayed hidden in plain sight. A life that didn't chase the spotlight, yet left a lasting emotional imprint. And as we move forward, you might find that the most unexpected legacy in this cast is also the one that lingers the longest. John Vernon, who played Fletcher, was in his early 40s, around 43, when he stepped into a role that didn't rely on force, but on quiet tension. Fletcher wasn't a traditional villain, nor a clear ally. He existed somewhere in between, a man bound by duty, yet aware of the moral weight behind it. That internal conflict gave the character a subtle depth, and Vernon carried it with remarkable restraint. Unlike more explosive roles in the film, Fletcher lingered in the background, watching, calculating, and at times, questioning. It's that restraint that made him memorable. He represented something real, the kind of man caught between orders and conscience, between what is expected and what feels right. John Vernon's career reflected that same steady presence. He became one of those actors whose work quietly shaped the texture of film and television throughout the 1970s and beyond. From westerns to dramas to even comedy, he adapted seamlessly, never needing to dominate a scene to leave an impression. His versatility allowed him to move across genres with ease, building a career that was both consistent and respected. He passed away at the age of 72, leaving behind a body of work that may not always have been front and center, but was essential to the stories he helped tell. Vernon's legacy is a reminder that not every impact in cinema is loud. Some are built slowly, role by role, until they become part of the foundation itself. And as we move from that quiet strength, the next story brings something even softer. Something that grounded the film in humanity when everything else felt uncertain. Paula Trueman, who portrayed Grandma Sarah, was already in her 70s during the filming of the Outlaw Josey Wales. In a world defined by survival and hardship, her presence offered something rare: warmth. She wasn't a figure of power or conflict, but of care, of continuity, of the simple human need for connection. Grandma Sarah represented stability in a story filled with loss. Through her, the film reminded us that even in the harshest environments, kindness still finds a way to exist. Trueman brought that to life with a natural ease, drawing not from spectacle, but from sincerity. Her career stretched far beyond this role. With deep roots in theater, she spent decades refining her craft long before many audiences recognized her face. Stage work gave her a foundation that translated beautifully to screen, measured, authentic, and deeply human. She wasn't chasing fame. She was committed to the work itself. Over the years, she continued acting, building a long and steady career that reflected dedication rather than ambition. And perhaps that's what makes her story so meaningful. Not every legacy is defined by headlines. Some are defined by endurance, by showing up, by contributing quietly but consistently. Paula Trueman lived to the age of 96, a testament not only to longevity, but to a life spent in art, in discipline, and in grace. Her presence in the Outlaw Josey Wales may have been gentle, but it carried weight, the kind that stays with you long after the story ends. Because sometimes, it's not the loudest characters we remember most, but the ones who made us feel at home. Sam Bottoms, who played Jamie, was just around 21 years old when he appeared in the Outlaw Josey Wales. In a story shaped by loss, survival, and hardened experience, Jamie represented something different. Youth still finding its place in a world that had already taken so much. He wasn't as guarded as Josey, nor as reflective as Lone Weighty. Instead, he stood at the edge of understanding, learning what it meant to endure. There was a quiet sincerity in Bottom's performance. Jamie wasn't defined by strength or authority, but by growth. Through him, we saw the beginning of a journey rather than the weight of a past. That contrast added an important layer to the film, reminding audiences that even in the aftermath of violence, life continues forward through those still learning. After the film, Sam Bottoms continued working steadily in both film and television. He never became a household name in the way some of his co-stars did, but he remained active, taking on a variety of roles that reflected his range and commitment to the craft. Like many actors of his generation, his career was built not on constant spotlight, but on persistence. He passed away at the age of 53, a life that, in many ways, feels shorter when viewed against the long arcs of others in the cast. And perhaps that's what makes his story resonate differently. Where some lives stretched across decades of recognition and reinvention, his reminds us of something more fragile. The fleeting nature of youth, and how quickly time can reshape even the brightest beginnings. Jamie was a character still becoming, and in a way, Sam Bottom's story carries that same feeling, unfinished, yet meaningful in the moments he gave to the screen. The Outlaw Josey Wales told a story about revenge, survival, and the myth of the lone gunslinger. But time has a way of reshaping every legend. On screen, these characters lived through violence and loss in a matter of hours. In real life, the people behind them lived through decades, growing older, changing paths, facing quiet victories and personal endings far removed from the dust of the frontier. What once felt like a story about justice slowly reveals something deeper. Not one of revenge, but of endurance. Not of outlaws, but of human lives moving forward, long after the final scene fades. The West promised immortality through legend, but reality offers something more honest. A legacy built not in gunfights, but in persistence, reinvention, and the roles, both big and small, that stay with us. And maybe that's why this film still lingers. Because behind every hardened face was a real person, living a life far more complex than any script could capture. So now I'm curious. When you think back on the Outlaw Josey Wales, which character stayed with you the most? And why? If you enjoy exploring the real stories behind the faces you remember, take a moment to subscribe. There are many more journeys like this waiting to be uncovered.